When the summer solstice starts and we're sitting on a beach or fishing at the lake or just taking a break, the countdown clocks have started, fight songs pass the time. The days may run together, but you know that in our mind it's always Saturday. Take me back to Saturday. Saturday. Give me those 12 Saturdays. Spot the ball. March Madness is a blast, and we love baseball games. But nothing beats the feeling of having a killer slate of games. It's always Saturday. Take me back to Saturday. Saturday. Dreaming of all Saturdays. Spot the ball. Spot the ball. Oh, college football. Sat out your day.
For the small, lay a big hit and pass a kickball. This game is for us all. From Seattle down toward the Keys, this game is you, this game is me. Cast dogs and steer, be the tree. This game is America, so sing it loud with me. College football forever. College football forever. Downtown LA, Starkville City. 1 week you're up next, take a dip. Run the rock or let it rip. This game is America. All say, can you sing it with me?
We just stepped on her face with a hot-tail Logan brought her nose. Whoa, Nelly!
College football forever. College football forever. College football forever. College football forever.
College football is a year-round discussion with these two. Here's JC and Morgan. Mike Morgan of ESPN and JC Sherbert of 24/7 Sports have you covered, beginning right now.
We indeed have you covered. Happy 4th of July weekend, as it were. We are coming to you just on the eve, I guess you could say, of another 4th, which is always a majestic time. We know everybody out there is ready and amped for a holiday weekend. And somewhere along the line, whether you're watching, listening live, or sometime down the road on every platform imaginable that we're on, from YouTube to Twitter to Spotify to Google Play to iTunes, etc., we will give you your fix as we do all the time here on JC and Morgan now. And it's 10th year since 2016. And we don't rest on our laurels. We are always modifying, enhancing, improving. You saw some of the new open there. We've kind of trimmed the format down a little bit. Having done a lot of sports talk radio over the years, I'm sure many of you listen to shows. You can always tell when the hosts, they're looking at the clock and they still got like 45 minutes left. And like, what are we going to do to fill this? We got nothing left. We've used all our material. It's like a stand-up comedian that gets like a 20-minute set, and he used all his material in 7 minutes, and now it's like, I got to do crowd work for 13 minutes. Hey, where are you from? Are you guys dating? Oh, yeah. What do you do? What does he do? We're like the opposite on this show. Our biggest problem is once JC and I get rolling, we don't even in the off season, we have a hard time cramming everything in, but we're going to try to be as efficient as humanly possible. That is our goal for the upcoming season. Here we are in July and through the rest of 2025. So we've done a couple of things and we'll keep that going, but we're still going to have plenty to get into as we do each and every time. And as often is the case in the off season, we love hitting the guest line. Connor O'Gara does a really good job at Saturday Down South. He's been on with us once or twice before, so he is worthy. He's a part of that distinguished group that's worthy of a multiple guest appearance on JC and Morgan. We'll chat with him about a number of things. He's always what I admire about those guys, and Connor in particular. I'm not as familiar with the others, is that they come up with stuff. It's not just, hey, how about the Mount Rushmore of it? No, they like find ways to be creative. Connor does a good job of that. A guy that actually has Big Ten in his background that's kind of become saturated with the SEC and does a really good job. We'll chat with him. We'll see what G5 John has to do wrapping up the G5 new coaches. I think he tackles Conference USA. Yeah, he does this time out. And we'll talk about some of the headlines going on. As always, we are powered by Advocare. Save 20% on every item. And that's like forever. That's not just today. Save 20%, promo code Mike Morgan. You heard it right here. We start every show with a little bit of spark. That is like just how every day gets started for me. I don't even drink coffee. I've been doing this for 12 years since somebody introduced me to it at the gym. And then as always, we remind you if you're working out or doing something where you need to rehydrate, hey, how about that? It's called Rehydrate. And it doesn't have all the sugar of the Gatorades and everything else, but all the vitamins and what you need. Check them out. Go to avocare.com. We had somebody mention they had trouble sleeping. They got you covered. If you have some type of health issue, they got you covered. If you just need a multivitamin, they got you covered. Everything at avocare.com. Again, promo code Mike Morgan. Save 20% on everything you order delivered to your door. Absolutely free. Our producer is the Mad Dog, Phil Molinax, and the man wearing the festive hat, JC Sherbert, up in Midwest country where it's not freezing cold yet. JC, how are you?
Actually, it's supposed to be about 90-something degrees here tomorrow.
So what is the advantage of living there? If you get the brutal hot and you get the freezing cold.
And it's humid in the Midwest, too. I mean, people don't realize that during summer. It gets very humid up here. But
thank goodness for good food.
I think it's because, like, it's not like 80 in the morning, during the mornings, it's still like 60-ish. There's sometimes a nice breeze that blows through and all that good stuff. So, it is what it is. The fall is actually the good season in the Midwest since I've been here. It kind of stays in the 50s, but it doesn't stay as hot like it does down south. Down south, it's not uncommon Halloween weekend to have a game during the day where you're in the 80s wearing shorts. So a little bit more of a fall. The spring is cruel. But I'm not complaining. Doing a little low country boil tomorrow in the yard.
Sure. Nice. Way to go.
For around here where it's like burgers and hot dogs.
I was going to say, how's that going to mesh with your local folk there, your neighbors, your flock?
I wanted burgers and hot dogs, man. So this was a request from the fam.
Okay.
Yeah, certainly looking forward to it. What was on my normal Thursday shows today, for those that don't know, I'm on Tide 100 in Tuscaloosa and
Tide
on
100.
with Bill King in Nashville every Thursday.
Bill King.
We had a nice reminiscing segment with Bill King, and of course Tide was all about the House settlement and recruiting because of some of Hugh Freeze's comments he made. But and we'll have a question about that in the JC5. But certainly was refreshing to kind of talk back and. This time of year, right before the different conferences, media days and things like that, it's sort of the eye, not the eye of the storm, but you're sitting on the beach and you see the clouds in the distance, and it's about to get real. I always enjoy one final hurrah, on July 4th, and then it's time to get back to work for the season. So excited to be here today and to talk a little ball and whet the appetite, if you will.
Well, you mentioned the beach. I've got Mayor Vaughn behind me. There he is from Jaws. And in the immortal words of Mayor Vaughn, The beach has got to be open. Some are dollars, so it doesn't matter how many shark attacks are going on. We're still open for business on the beach, thanks to Mayor Vaughn. Happy 50th again to Jaws. If you haven't seen it, you ought to be locked away and forced to watch it like Clockwork Orange. Just have something, shove your eyes open for an hour and 40 minutes. You will not regret it. All right. We have our producer's undivided attention today because he's not working two shows at the same time. So the production ready to flow as we welcome in the morale of a great nation always depends on it. It's the JC5.
It's time for the top topics in the sport. We bring the JC5. Number 1.
All right, Mike. Texas State joins the Pac-12.
I knew you were going to go there.
They are I had it as question 5, but I've got a fiver or dimer style movie question for you.
Oh, I love it. Okay.
Just because it's a holiday and I'll just kind of shake things up. But so explain this to me from a TV standpoint. I'm a little taken aback by the whole thing just because I don't know why there's this battle of egos between the Mountain West and what's left of the Pac-12.
Mhm.
And I continue to get pissed off about the fact Cal and Stanford are just a little too good to be part of the West Coast the resurgence of West Coast athletics at the college level, and they're in the ACC, which makes no sense. And but tech, so I've kind of always been of the opinion, take the best flagship schools in that are the best schools that also are in growth states and build another, have a resurgence of West Coast college athletics. And the Mountain West and Pac-12 are at each other's throat. I mean, they're like now hate each other. So
the two female commissioners going at it, right?
I think so.
I don't remember their names, but I believe they're the only two female commissioners.
They are.
And they cannot find common ground
sharks,
on anything.
Man. They're sharks. Speaking of Jaws, so well, I'm sorry, we talked about Jaws before the show, and with that, so those of you that are listening around, what are you talking about? Anyway,
Hooper.
But so explain it to me from a TV perspective. Just looking at the Pac-12, I know they needed an 8 school. Texas State, not the Fighting Armadillos. The Bobcats used to be Southwest Texas State. San Marcos, Texas is in between Austin and San Antonio. They're leaving the Sun Belt for the Pac-12. Take it from here.
Great question. Yeah, I think what the Pac has to do, you have to recalibrate, right? I mean, you just suffered the demolition of your once proud league, the League of Champions, as the late Bill Walton loved to call it. And so what do you do now? Well, I mean, do you take your ball and go home and fold the tent, or do you just fight like hell to go from the Pac-2, which is what they were last year with Washington State and Oregon State, and do the best you can? And I think they're doing the best they can at this point. Why Texas State? The model now for the Pac is geography be damned. It's damned everywhere else. Why in the hell are we going to try to just keep it close by? There's not enough there. There's just not enough there. So they need to get some markets. And one thing, I've never been to San Marcos, Texas, but here's what I know about it. It's sandwiched in between Austin and Houston. And those are two massive, highly coveted markets. Like if you listen to the Texas State radio network and Leo Brockmeyer, the voice of what's their mascot again? I just forgot. The
Bobcats.
The Bobcats.
Yeah, they're the Bobcats. They're not the Armadillos.
You got me thinking the movie, and I wanted to say Armadillos, and that would have been very wrong. But so if you're the voice of the Bobcats, you're heard in Austin and you're heard in Houston. That might be on a 1,000-watt AM station, but damn it, you can say you're on in those two markets, and that's what they're thinking of with TV. They just signed a deal with CBS. It's not a massive amount of money. It's not the kind of money that the SEC and Big Ten make. But you have to recalibrate. You are just trying to stay above water. So you're trying to add the best of the best from the Mountain West and that little footprint. What's relevant, remains relevant and attainable on the left coast, because you're not getting Oregon, you're not getting Washington, you're not getting Southern Cal, they're all gone. So Texas State, all of a sudden, who I dare say probably 10 years ago, most of us never even heard of. Texas State becomes a bit of a commodity in this state. So I actually think the move makes sense. It's there's a little bit of desperation to it, yes, but quite frankly, sometimes desperate times call for desperate measures, and that's where the pack is.
Yeah. The reason we had, I mean, it was known as Southwest Texas State for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Two of the more famous alums from Texas State, Mike. Just a little
Who's
Bobcat
that?
trivia.
Oh, I'm here for it.
Not Kathy Ireland and Scott Bakula and
Damn.
the late great Robert Loggia, who Academy Award winning performance as Wally Rickendorf in that movie, by the way, the defensive
Galosia.
Robert Loggia.
Robert
Secretary
Loggia.
of
Good at
Defense.
everything.
Then wake him.
Tony Montana,
Tony,
don't kill me.
Don't kill me, Tony. I saw that the other day, a clip of that.
That's a Ben Franklin.
Anyway, you're a piece of anyway. Texas State, 40,000 students, right? So it's kind of got that UCF, USF, Charlotte. A lot of coaches for some reason love that Charlotte job because there's so many students. Kind of the upside. The rebrand to Texas State, I think, helps. So two famous alums, Texas State University.
You got
Lyndon Johnson.
Okay.
President Johnson. And someone much cooler than Lyndon Johnson, in my opinion, George Strait.
So one escalated the Vietnam War. The other one sold a lot of tickets.
Is the king of country music. Yeah. So, maybe they can get George Strait in there to do an NIL concert or something. But I think it's great for them. Would I've maybe made some different decisions? Yeah, but my plan for out there would have been more about consolidation. And, we had Lugs on one time, Mike, and he told us Montana was like going to a game at LSU. I mean, maybe Montana doesn't want to go higher than FCS, but that state is growing. It's not a big TV market now, but in 10 years it will be. I don't think there's a lot of looking down the road. If you kind of read it, people are like, they're mentioning G.J. Kinney, the coach there. Well, they got a good G.J. Kinney. Look, dude, do you think how long do you think he's going to be there?
That's the question.
Yeah. He is really good. I mean, they lost. They had Arizona State at home last year and lost by a field goal. That's a playoff team, but we'll see sort of what happens there. But was interested in your take of that, and that makes a lot of sense. It's Texas is a big place, a lot of people in Texas, a lot of students, a lot of upside, and it's not like Tulane or Memphis, which to me would have not made a lot of sense.
Well, and the other thing, I'll just cap it off with this, is to say what everybody already knows, but everything in Texas it loves football, is all about football. I can't necessarily say that about Tulane. I can't necessarily say that about some of these other big cities that, you landed a big TV market, but they don't love football. We know the entire state of Texas loves football, high school football, college football, pro football, and that includes San Marcos, and that includes the Bobcats.
Number 2.
Here's a statistic for you, Michael, and maybe you can explain why. I have my thoughts on it. There are only 25 FBS football teams out of the 113 that there are that have more than 11 out of the 22 starters on both sides of the ball.
I saw that
this year. Shout out to McCready and Siskey podcast, which is one I listen to a lot. Neil McCready and Coach Siskey. It gets good sometimes, but they pointed that out. And then there's that status also elsewhere. COVID, transfer portal, lots of different things going on. In your opinion, does this mean that this year will be more predictable than ever, both from a team outcome standpoint, but also from some of these All-American teams and stuff? Could we see more players this year emerge onto the national scene than maybe the last couple of years where you had a lot of older dudes and known entities?
Oh, great question. My thought process on where we are in college football, where with everything that has changed, we are officially in the House settlement salary cap era of college football and everything else. I still think we are in a massive period of predictability at the top. And I just don't see that changing. I still feel like the Georgias, the Texases, the Alabamas, the Ohio States, and so on are going to continue to use the advantages they already have. And then financially in the portal, they're not going to be left behind. In one way or another, I just think all those resources will continue to be an advantage for them, like an Oregon for that matter. I that's my prediction. I hope I'm wrong. One of the many predictions I make that I hope I'm entirely wrong. And there's a lot more, it's a little more like college basketball where it is unpredictable and you do have different teams and different stories and everything else. But I just think the whole system has always lent itself to a cabal of sorts of a few programs dominating. And I don't think anything has changed in that. And again, now what you've done is it used to be like an LSU in 2019, which was one of the best college football teams I've ever seen. Okay. Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and Jefferson and Allaire and always studs on defense. And then in 2020, they lost a bunch of those guys and they had a terrible year, and that led to the demise of Coach O. Now what they can do is, let's say a Georgia or a Texas had that situation, they can just go in the portal and backfill, right? I mean, you look at the elite programs, it used to be even elite programs, if they had to go with a freshman quarterback, a first-year starter quarterback, where you could anticipate a potential fall, they don't have to go with that anymore. They can just go into the portal, drop a few mil, and get a Cam Ward. I don't see it changing a whole lot with all of that. And I think that stat that you mentioned at the top, I mean, I think that's the new normal. I don't think you're going to see teams with many returning starters like we used to, where you kind of knew and fans grew to really love a guy who was in their program 3-4 years. I think in many cases, a lot of that's going to be much different.
Yeah, I think a lot of this too, with this specific statistic, and it could be the new normal, is the COVID year in 2020. Everybody got a free year,
Mm-hmm.
and so there were a lot of guys, like 5th, 6th-year guys last year. Those COVID, what do we call them? Do we call them COVID kids? I mean, that sounds weird. But the COVID dudes,
Yeah.
they're kind of, there's very few of them left.
The 7-year guys.
The 7-year, there's a couple of 7-year guys left here and there, but it's just one of those things. But yeah, I will see what happens. I think from my perspective, it may be that we have the same teams, but I think some players we don't know about on those teams, or we're not talking about right now on those teams, will probably emerge. Let's get on to number
3.
It's just number 3. All right. So on your point, real quickly, I need to shut up. On your point, real quickly, don't you think? Because you said teams will find a way, and I know you've been consistent with this one way or the other. With the way the House settlement's structured, and the NCAA and the Power Conference commissioners, and everybody hoping everybody sticks to it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do they owe a fiduciary duty to their business partners to not try to work around it? Or is it still, as college football's always been, everybody for themselves? What's your thought on that? Just from not that, yes, it's going to happen and it's inevitable, but should it happen?
Okay, first off, I'm not smart enough to understand the word fiduciary.
Oh, that's like in business, like your obligation to your business partner.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, my bad.
So
hey, I wish I didn't know that.
No, that's good. Look, I like expanding the vocabulary at any opportunity. So your question is, do the schools owe it to the fan base, or do
the schools owe it to the sport? Like, do the other schools that they're competing against, and
to be on the level
in business with? I mean,
yeah. So you're asking like the age-old question. Like, you remember back in the day, the big argument was, for example, I can remember having this debate on, having a salary cap in Major League Baseball, which we've never needed one more. The Dodgers can outspend everybody on the planet by $100 million. And they'll probably buy themselves at least another trip to the World Series, if not a title. And people say, well, there's no salary cap when you're working at Burger King. I'm like, well, Burger King's objective is to put McDonald's and Wendy's out of business. There is no shared mutual goal there. There's no mutual interest. I own a Burger King and there's a McDonald's 1 mile down the street. I don't want that McDonald's to do well. If you're in a league, you need everybody to succeed, or at least to have an equal chance to succeed, for the league to prosper at its best. This is the NFL model, which clearly is the 10,000-pound gorilla and then some that dominates more than anything on the planet. Now, part of that is football is king, as we all know. The other part of it is it's a well-run league compared to the other two. So that gets me to your question. Do they have a responsibility? I mean, I could make the argument they do. Hey, let's all look out for one another here a little bit. Let's keep this sport healthy. I just don't have faith in it, JC. I mean, let's start at the conference level. The conference is the SEC cares zero Fs about the Big Ten doing well. Now, they're being friendly. Sankey and Petiti are being friendly because they realize they're the two gargantuans of the sport. But make no mistake about it, if they could, back kneecap them and take them out and not have to compete for playoff spots every year, they would do it. Instead, what they've done, the two of them have kind of formed a duopoly, and they're kneecapping everybody else in college football, where the other ones are trying to just try to financially compete with the Big Ten and the SEC. So do they have a responsibility? I love where your head is at there. I just don't think it's reality in terms of them caring.
Yeah, I'm realistic about it. I may go stage a mostly peaceful protest in front of the Big Ten offices at the Fogo de Chao.
Yeah.
And then go eat Fogo de Chao while I'm taking a break. If they don't get on the same page for this playoff thing. I know we got Connor, so I'm going to skip the $5 or $10 question for today. It's a timeless one. You'll enjoy it. It's about the movie Caddyshack.
Well, maybe we can get to it at the end.
Maybe so.
We'll take a quick.
Yeah, we'll take a quick. After we get done with Connor, we'll take a quick
time out.
All right, so 2 yes or no questions. To end up
okay, got it.
Will Dan Mullen be the coach at UNLV in 2026? Yes or no?
Another great question.
Reclaiming my time.
I'm going to say no. If somehow they get the G5 bid, which they're certainly going to contend for it, I say he gone, and he's getting back to Power 4. I'll say no.
Will Bobby Petrino be a head coach at some college football program in 2026?
Yes, because one of two things to me is going to happen. Arkansas has a great year, and he's like, okay, this has been fun, but I'm not taking a back seat anymore. Or Sam Pittman gets fired middle of the season with a lower buyout, and guess who takes over? Bobby Petrino.
Bobby P. All right, we'll get a break and get Connor in.
Connor O'Gara on the other side. It's JC and Morgan.
Welcome to Palm Casual Patio Furniture. Because we are the factory, Palm Casual has the ability to offer the highest quality outdoor furniture paired with world-class service. Since 1979, our factory showrooms have done our best to make the buying process as easy as possible for our customers. Our understanding of the many factors that go into your decision has helped us create our 30-day trial period that increases the level of comfort our customers feel during the shopping experience. Visit us in Somerville, Mount Pleasant, Myrtle Beach, and Bluffton, and online at palmcasual.com for our products in out-of-state locations. Go Gamecocks!
Hey folks, want to tell you about our friends at Titan Construction Group really quick. They're a mid-Atlantic based general contractor, specializes in retail, restaurant, and office construction. TCG strives to separate itself from other general contractors by adding value every step of the process. From project budgeting to estimation, value engineering to construction, they focus on those relationships and not the transaction. Titan builds partnerships one project at a time. Among their clients are Starbucks, Crumble Cookie, Blake Pizza, Home Goods, 15 plus years experience, based in Midlothian, Virginia, and contracted in Virginia, West Virginia, North Carolina, and South Carolina. So get on their website, TitanCGinc.com. That's TitanCGinc.com. Get in touch with Brad if you're in need of a general contractor that focuses on going above and beyond for their clients. That's Titan Construction Group, a proud sponsor of the JC and Morgan podcast.
We're passionate about making sure that the Nest and Wild mattress is the best it can be. Made well and made right. Right here in Tupelo, Mississippi. So how can we do all that? Work. Hard work. And that means something. The Nest and Wild mattress is a movement. It's a pride in where you come from and where you're going. So get comfortable, because this movement is just beginning.
This is JC and Morgan on the Chief Sports Network.
College football. Forever.
And we are back. It is JC and Morgan. 4th of July weekend installment of the program, as always, powered by Advocare, advocare.com. Get your 20% discount today. Promo code Mike Morgan is where it is at, and you'll be glad with some of the products you bring in. A guy that is always powered up whenever we have him on is Connor O'Gara of Saturday Down South, and keeping everybody entertained with a number of articles on the website and keeping us entertained here for a segment today. Connor, how are you?
Gentlemen, doing well. Happy 4th of July to you both. Look, I feel like this has been I haven't been on with you guys in a minute, and I know Mike, you had reached out a little bit ago, so glad we were able to make this work today. It's been too long.
Yeah,
I
agree
agree
with you.
Bears fan?
JC, I am originally from the suburbs of Chicago. I know you are a Chicago man yourself, but you are a Chicago man. I am not a true Chicagoan. I am a suburbs of Chicago native. That is what I claim. I am from Buffalo Grove. I have grown up, sadly, as a Bears fan, as a Cubs fan as well. And that is the path that, for whatever reason, I've chosen.
The Bears are, I grew up in South Carolina. That's a lot of misery, but not with Clemson, with the other school. But I've never seen misery until I experienced the Bears. That's about 9 million people just miserable all the time. And what's crazy, they got off to a good start this past year. And I'd go to walk. People were polite. They were happy. There was a spring in their step when they were 4-2. Everybody's happy. Then the game with the Commanders happened, and just depressing. So,
what does Caleb Williams look like in year 2 is the $1 million question.
The smart thing they did was they got him some protection. I mean, they had no line last year, so.
Yeah, badly needed to overhaul that unit. And if they didn't, it was going to be rough, even with Ben Johnson on board. But if not now, then when? Just to have a competent offense. That's the most depressing part of it. Is it's one thing if you are a team that is just historically bad, but when you add to it that your quarterback play is just such a disaster, like to never have a 4,000-yard passer is almost impossible. And yet the Bears have done it. I mean, the best quarterbacks that my team has had is a guy, in Jim McMahon that I rep. I wasn't even alive when Jim McMahon was actually good in doing things for the Bears. I was born in 1990. And that is the path that, for whatever reason, I have chosen. And I don't wish that on anyone, because it's a rough existence. Or at least it is now in the pre-Ben Johnson era. Talk to me in a year.
Yeah, you will respect Rex Grossman. That's all I'm going to say, Connor.
Will I? Will I?
Maybe. I mean, he got to a Super Bowl.
A lot of Devin Hester on that team.
You got to grade a curve. You got to grade on a curve for Bears quarterbacks.
At least you got the Cubs, Connor, because our house is a White Sox. I live in the Southwest burbs, in Homer Glen down there. So everybody here is a White Sox fan. That is unfathomable. So I kind of just I'm a Braves fan too. I pull for the White Sox in the American League, but that's I haven't even watched them this year. It's so sad. So, but there are a lot of depressed people about that too. But anyway, we can talk about Chicago sports.
We can do a whole segment on Crow Armstrong
and lose our entire audience if I continue to talk. But
all right.
Anyway, go ahead.
We'll segue smoothly from the Cubs, White Sox to college football, which is what you're majoring in, Connor, on the site Saturday Down South. And yeah, it's been a couple years, but you are a part of a illustrious group of guests, the multi-timer. You know, we've had a lot of one and dones. You've officially reached the multi-timers, so that's a status that you can wear proudly over there in Orlando. A lot of places to go here, and we'll get to some of the teams you've been breaking down of late on the site. I want to go back. I guess it was maybe a week or so ago. I saw you had it, and I put JC on the spot last week on what we called the heat meter on the SEC coaches in terms of the hot seat, because last year was an anomaly. Not a single coach fired. It just doesn't happen a whole lot, especially now in an expanded SEC. But lo and behold, there are a half a dozen coaches that you could make a case would be on the hot seat from the SEC this year. And I saw you put the over-under at 2.5. Give us the your line of thinking on that, because I think that's actually a pretty good number.
Yeah, I was thinking about 3, and then I thought, you know what, then from an over-under perspective, 4 is a ton, and for the over to hit, that would be really, really difficult. But I put it at 3 or at 2.5 ultimately, because I feel like water has to find its level with this. As much as everyone wants to talk about the revenue sharing era and how these athletic departments aren't going to be willing to fire coaches anymore, I think last year was just kind of a one-off. Look at the 4 coaches that entered last season with questions about their futures. And I'll even include Shane Beamer, because when you get a new athletic director, I think you at least have to question that when you're in year 4. And there are obviously, you know, expectations coming off a disappointing season. But those 4 coaches, Clark Lee and Sam Pittman and Billy Napier as well, they're all winning seasons. All winning seasons. And so look across college football, not just in the SEC. We didn't have a single coach with an 8-figure buyout get fired. The richest buyouts that were paid were Neil Brown and Ryan Walters. Those guys were less than $10 million. In this day and age, that's nothing. There's like 47 coaches in college football that have buyouts of at least $10 million. We're not going to live in this world in which the buyout goes away from college football. It's unrealistic to think that these guys just have jobs in perpetuity. Like, we don't live in that world. But as it relates to this upcoming season in the SEC, there are still a lot of those guys, you know, some of which I just mentioned. You have to add Brent Venables. You have to add Mark Stoops into that, even though their buyouts are between $35 and $37 million. You have to add them into that conversation and just kind of go, what if? Now, I'm not going to be one of those guys that's going to sit here and tell you that Brian Kelly and his $50 million buyout is on the line when that guy has done nothing but have 9 and 10 win seasons at LSU. But there is at least an expectation there that they need to be able to take that next step, or else we're going to have these questions about Brian Kelly moving forward. So, yeah, it does feel like there are a lot of those coaches in the SEC that, depending on who you ask, they'll tell you, might be coaching for his job this year.
Yeah, Brian Kelly, who JC's got on a 1 through 5, a 3 on the heat meter. I think the highest he has is Pittman and Stoops. But, I mean, I could see a world in September where LSU loses at Clemson and then at home to Florida. I believe that game's at home, right?
It's in Baton Rouge this year.
I mean, look, they might be they'll certainly be favored at home against Florida, I would think. I haven't checked the spread on Clemson. I'm guessing that's about a pick 'em, maybe Clemson a slight favorite at home. But they could easily be 0-2. And at that point, I think that heat meter is just sizzling regardless of buyout. LSU there's already clearly a disconnect there. I'm not saying it's fair. This is not me talking of what should happen. It's just what reality is. I don't feel the love. I don't feel the love right now for Brian Kelly. And if they drop 2 in September, it could turn toxic really quick.
I have LSU winning a national championship, so I'll agree to disagree.
Do you really?
That. I do.
Wow. I do. Okay, I did not. Have you broken that on your site, or is this?
Yeah.
Okay.
We've gone down like the rabbit hole of all the different reasons why in year 4, which, by the way, no LSU coach in the 21st century has exited year 4 without a national championship. So just something to keep in mind with Brian Kelly. And you talk about, like, is there, some sort of disconnect? I think LSU's got a ton of alignment right now. If you look at the way that it ended up with the transfer portal and how they were willing to spend after they lose Bryce Underwood to Michigan at the 11th hour. And then Garrett Nussmeier announces he's coming back. They attack the portal in ways that we have not seen LSU attack it. And that's why they ended up with the number 1 class in the 24/7 sports class rankings. And you look at that roster and go, man, they addressed every single need. Now, it doesn't guarantee that they're going to be this 12-0 team. It doesn't mean it's going to be shades of 2019. It doesn't even mean that they're going to have an offense that's as prolific as they were in 2023, which, by the way, still wasn't good enough to make the college football playoff. But it does feel like a team that is going to take that next step. And part of that is my belief in Garrett Nussmeier, the weapons that they added, Nick Anderson coming over from Oklahoma, Barryon Brown coming from Kentucky, and what they did defensively. If they get Whit Weeks healthy, I don't even need to see the best version of Harold Perkins Jr. to see this LSU defense take another step forward with the guys that they added in the portal. Mansour Delane coming over from Virginia Tech is going to be really, really important. DJ Pickett, the 6'4" true freshman corner that everybody's talking about in Baton Rouge, is going to play immediately and going to be a stud there. I just think that LSU senses that urgency and follow the money in this day and age of college football. Follow the teams like Ohio State that sense that urgency and let a previous season fuel that next season. You can do that in this day and age. I think that's going to be the storyline more than Brian Kelly's job security at LSU this year.
LSU went from $8 million for their roster last year to 18 this year.
Yeah.
So that was a big step up with that. I like their ends they got from Florida and Florida State, Peyton and Plyburn. I like Plyburn quite a bit. I think that, and they didn't have much out there last year. Their defense that was not like an LSU defense. I think Baker did it with smoke and mirrors. I think he's a great coach. They probably wouldn't be my pick, but I don't think you're wrong. If Barry and Brown can catch the football, he's lethal with it once it gets in his hands. And Anderson obviously has a lot of upside, and they have other receivers as well.
Aaron Anderson, people need to be talking a lot more about what he did last year in the slot.
Really good.
He's an impact player. Might be my favorite player returning in college football.
Yeah. He's that may be one of those, Mike, that we're not talking about now that we'll talk about. So
I look. You're making a personnel argument, Connor, and I don't argue with it. They had a huge portal. I don't love the receivers maybe as much as you do compared to what I normally see out of LSU with guys like Chase and Jefferson and going back to Beck. Like I've seen enough of Brown and Nick Anderson. We'll see what he's like healthy now in an LSU uniform. And Nussmeier, I'm a huge Garrett Nussmeier guy. He does have to cut down the soul-crushing pick when, it falls into a little bit of Brett Favreism at times. That's the only thing I'll say negative about Garrett Nussmeier, because there's no question he's got NFL arm talent. But I'm just saying, if even with all that talent, and your stat only makes the argument stronger. I say this all the time. They had their last 3 coaches won a national title. 2 of them, let's be honest, most of them don't consider Les Miles and Ed Orgeron splitting the atom of college football coaching over the weekend during their time. I think many people associate those two with, well, yeah, they won it because they were at LSU. So here comes Brian Kelly, and now you're supposed to continue that trend. Just saying, if they drop 2 in September, but I'll be waiting to see. Yeah, they got to win. So with that being said, who in your mind, you mentioned 2.5, who is the hottest of the hot on the hot seat?
I think Hugh Freeze has the hottest seat of any coach in college football. Mm-hmm. I did a hot seat index podcast for every coach in the SEC, and I did 1 through 10 instead of 1 through 5, and I had Freeze at a 9. Mm-hmm. And 10 being if you park in the wrong spot on Monday morning, you could get fired like that quickly. There's just something about the way that this has started that just has me feeling like it is not built to last. Now, you could point to the fourth quarter issues that they had time and time again. Hugh Freeze taking more of the onus as a play caller last year did not yield the results that they were hoping for. Doubling down on Peyton Thorne was a poor decision. They were significantly behind the 8 ball when it came to quarterback play. And it kind of overshadowed the fact that this roster actually had a lot of positives to it. Teams that finished in the top 25 in yards per play on offense and defense are not supposed to be 5 and 7. They're just not. But at the same time, you look at the way that recruiting has set up and all of these different pieces that are seemingly going against them going into this year. I'm scratching my head going, man, I don't know that I can bank on Hugh Freeze taking that next step this year, despite the fact that this might be the most talented group of receivers that Auburn's ever had. They could finally have a first-round pick on that defense with Keldrick Falk, the way that he's coming into this season as a proven 2-year edge guy for them. DJ Durkin, kind of an underrated defense last year, didn't get a lot of help, but I just don't know that Jackson Arnold is going to be the guy that's going to right the ship. And so I think that Hugh Freeze, his seat is unbelievably hot in year 3. The buyout is structured extremely favorably to be able to pay those monthly payments instead of someone like Mark Stoops, who would be owed all of that money in the first 60 days. And it feels like Auburn was kind of bracing for this, and they could definitely pull the plug at the end of year 3, even though they committed what, $37 million to Gus and Harsin. So I just think that he is one of those coaches that, man, if he doesn't improve by multiple wins, I think it'll be curtains on him.
2 games that will define that season in so many ways. And if they could just split one of the 2, they're both at home, Georgia and Alabama, of course. We'll see how they fare in those. They've actually played quite well in those under here. They just can't get over the proverbial hump.
Man, Baylor on a Friday night.
Oh, that's massive. 100%.
You Freeze.
100%. Trust me. That game has got
worded letter about that one.
Yeah. Yeah. And Baylor is no joke coming off an 8-win season last year. That is without question a losable game. I think one of the most in terms of range, if we were to do, this is a column for you, Connor, teams for the season that have the greatest range of win totals, right? Because like I said, Texas, you might say, oh, they're either going to win 10 or 11, right? Not a big, or if I said Vanderbilt, you might say, well, they're going to win 5 or 6. If I said Oklahoma, Mateer, everybody loves Mateer. Last year, you could not have blueprinted a better way to just sabotage a season with no O-line, no wide receivers. But all that should be fixed this year. And we know Venables can coach some defense. So what do you think the range is for Oklahoma in 2025?
I think it's about 6 to 9 wins, at least in the regular season. The schedule is still really difficult. And for whatever reason, the scheduling gods did not favor Oklahoma in the way that they favored Texas upon this entry into the SEC. It's unbelievable, the variance in those 2 schedules. But you're right. Brent Venables can coach up a defense. And if you think that their defense is due for aggression just because they lost Stutzman, they lost Bowman, you haven't been paying attention, because they have studs at every single level. That could be one of the best defenses, not just in the SEC, but in all of college football. Of course, the big question is John Mateer. They get the package deal with Ben Arbuckle and John Mateer coming over from Washington State, and they essentially copied the Vandy model, the New Mexico State to Vandy pipeline that worked so well for Clark Lee last year. And I credit Brent Venables for doing that. I do question, however, what it's going to look like with a quarterback like John Mateer that likes to extend plays. He likes to take chances downfield. You talk about Garrett Nussmeier having to cut down on those interceptions. John Mateer is going to have to cut down on those turnover-worthy plays because they were an issue at Washington State. Now, there are still people that believe John Mateer can be one of the best quarterbacks in America. Like I had Jake Dicker, his former coach at Washington State. I had him on my show a couple weeks ago, and he said, I think he's the best player in college football. I was like blown away that he said that about his former quarterback. I also can't sit here and tell you definitively, no, he's going to be a failure at Oklahoma, but Brent Venables is the guy that brought Jackson Arnold with him to SEC Media Days as this 5-star redshirt freshman. He's next, and then benched him before halftime of his first SEC game. So if you're a defensive-minded head coach, can you make those mental adjustments to know that you could have a couple of those games with John Mateer where he's throwing 2 or 3 picks and you're frustrated, your defense is all of a sudden put in a tough spot? Can you make that adjustment as a head coach and give him that leeway? And will that leeway yield success? That's the question that I have for this Oklahoma team, because you're right. The pieces are there. Offensive line should be better. They're not going to go through 8 offensive line rotations like they did last year. They're not going to lose their top 5 receivers to injury by the time September ends. Those things just can't happen on repeat. And Oklahoma, I think, is due for some improvement, but I don't know that the range is necessarily like 4 wins to 10 wins, but I definitely will give you like a 6 to 9 win range for them.
You mentioned how high you are in LSU. Everybody, their grandmother, and of course Vegas has the same usual suspects at the top odds-wise: Georgia, Bama, and Texas. So that's 4 teams if we add LSU to the mix in the top quote unquote tier. Give me somebody else to keep an eye on that maybe could sneak in that tier 1.
Ole Miss is really interesting because everybody knows the way that last year played out. It was a missed opportunity, a team that just should have had a clear path to just skip to the playoff. And they lose 3 games by a combined 13 points, 3 games that they should have won all of those games. And this was a team that finished number 2 in the nation in scoring defense, which has been the big Achilles heel throughout the Lane Kiffin era. They had a first-round quarterback in Jackson Dart. Trey Harris, when he was healthy, was playing out of his mind. And yet you look up and you're still on the outside looking in at the college football playoff. What's interesting about this team, which I would still bet on regression being the most likely outcome because they're last in the SEC and Bill Connolly's percentage of returning production, and it's a very new look offense. But what's interesting about this team is that Austin Simmons is kind of this wild card. He might not be the second coming of Tua Tagovailoa, but if you put those guys in the same room, you could convince yourself that Austin Simmons is Tua, albeit with maybe like 3 more inches of height. This is someone who's 19 years old, and get ready. This, Mike, when you're on an Ole Miss broadcast this year, you're going to bring this up, and you're going to come back to this moment and say, "Connor, you were exactly right." This kid is 19 years old, and he has graduated from college. Okay,
Yeah.
He reclassified 2 years, and if he would have just been a normal college kid and said, "Oh, I'm going to go class of 2025 like I'm supposed to. I'm going to play baseball like I was doing, and just enroll in August," he would just be starting school in a month. He's already graduated. This kid is well beyond his years. There's a reason why he surpassed Walker Howard on the depth chart. And if you look at the history of Lane Kiffin quarterbacks, you tend to feel pretty good. So if all of a sudden they're going to be humming on offense and this defense doesn't take quite the step back that many are expecting them to, even though they lose 5 players on that side of the ball to the NFL draft, you're going, man, Ole Miss can be a player. And with that schedule, do not dismiss the idea of Ole Miss having November playoff relevance.
I wonder, this is a good thing to look into. I'll probably look into it myself. Lane Kiffin with Charlie Weiss Jr. versus Lane Kiffin with Jeff Lebby at FAU and at Ole Miss. I would imagine, off the top of my head's big, but I can't crunch the numbers. I'm terrible at math. I think they're significantly lower, which I just, I don't have a real point there. It's just, it was interesting to me that the year their defense is really good, there were games where the offense just sort of sputtered. I mean, it was against good defensive teams, but they only really lit it up against Duke and Arkansas last year. That was surprising to me with all the weapons they had. Anyway, I agree on Austin Simmons completely. We've talked about him. I think he's a stud.
It's going to be fun to watch this year. Really fun guy to watch just because of not just the lefty thing, but you could point to what he did last year in that Georgia game. It was the biggest drive of Ole Miss's season. If he doesn't come in for an injured Jackson Dart after Georgia forces the turnover, marches right down the field and scores with the short field, and if Austin Simmons is just shaking in his boots, that is an entirely different Ole Miss game. And instead, it turns into what was easily the biggest win of the Kiffin era. It would have been nice for Ole Miss if it yielded a playoff berth. Ultimately, that didn't happen. But that dude looks like someone who is well beyond his years, who is not going to be afraid of the spotlight.
He is Connor O'Gara, Saturday Down South. You've been breaking down some teams. Let me start with a couple that you have had here lately. I love the term you used on Florida, agent of chaos. Expand on that.
Last year was Ohio State. That was the take coming into the season. I would argue even though Ohio State won a national championship, that still proved to be true. Look at how chaotic things were after the Michigan loss and how many people were saying even if Ryan Day wins a playoff game or two, he's still going to be fired. I mean, I was one of those people, and Ohio State ends up having just a historic run in the way that they are able to dominate throughout the college football playoff. But I think Florida is that team this year. And you talk about win variance. I've kind of already done this column in a way by saying Florida is the ultimate agent of chaos, because if DJ Lagway's shoulder isn't right after giving it an entire spring off, their floor is low. I mean, real low. With all due respect to Harrison Bailey, who started his career off at Tennessee, went to UNLV. He's been in a few different schools. With all due respect to Aiden Warner, the Yale transfer, who you heard that he went to Yale every single time he touched the football last year in relief of DJ Lagway and Graham Mertz. With all due respect to those guys, this Florida season is going in the toilet if DJ Lagway is not healthy. And that's a big question. It really is, because this is an issue that has lingered. Now, he's shown last year that he could play through injuries. He had an apparatus on his leg during that stretch to end the season. And man, you didn't know it. Like, he was doing things that were well beyond his years as a true freshman. And some of the throws he was making in tight windows, you were just left befuddled if you were an opposing defense. So it's interesting because Florida finally has studs in the trenches in ways that they haven't had in a really long time, with multiple guys on the offensive line and on the defensive line who could be first-round picks. And so despite the fact that this is still a Billy Napier coach team, and I'm always going to have a bit of skepticism with that, I still find myself going, man, They have the widest range of outcomes. They have a team that could be frisky as a 9-3 playoff team with maybe a Heisman contender at quarterback in Lagway if he's healthy, or they could be like a 3-9 2017 Florida all over again that just falls off the face of the earth, and you're just left wondering what the future of the program is. I think all those outcomes are in play, and if they are, Lagway hits the portal, the Florida vacancy is something. That's chaos.
Billy's buyout's much lower than it was a year ago. Much like I said about LSU, if Florida got pantsed last year at home to Miami. Now, I realize there's no Cam Ward there. It's now Carson Beck. But if they lose at Miami in week 3 and at LSU, the Billy Napier hot seat talk takes on a whole new dimension at that point.
The only thing that I'll push back on that, because I agree, the schedule – you look at those first 6 games, and you're like, man, are they going to be an underdog in 4 of those games? That's at least possible. It's not as historically daunting as it was last year. The only thing that I'll push back on with that, what gave Billy Napier a vote of confidence from Scott Strickland to keep his job for 2025? DJ Lagway. If Lagway is healthy and looks the part, even in a 6-6 season, which I don't know how imminent that is. I'm talking myself into more of 7-5, 8-4 vibes for this team as well. But if he looks the part, what's to say that they would punt on the Billy Napier era? Because you have to assume that if you're okay moving on from Billy Napier, you're okay moving on from DJ Lagway. Those two guys have been tied at the hip throughout this entire process, even though there are teams that were recruiting DJ Lagway after he got to Florida. All right. Like that's how crazy his recruitment has been, even though it hasn't had these twists and turns. So that's the only thing that I'll say. Billy Napier can play that card. And if DJ Lagway looks like, man, you'd be foolish to walk away from this guy, who knows? Maybe they just want to get over this stigma at Florida of, no coach post Urban Meyer lasting more than 4 years. Like, maybe they just finally want to give a coach a year 5 and just say, screw it, we got DJ Lagway, we're good to go. But you're right. Things can get real hairy in a hurry if they're starting off 2-4.
One thing to keep in mind, too, Florida last year in just regular old traditional recruiting kind of cleaned up. That staff did a good job of staying in touch and building relationships. And then when Billy was coming back, a lot of kids who were committed elsewhere wanted to go to Florida from the start. They just didn't, because they didn't think the coach was going to be there. And so they flipped a ton of guys. So yeah, I'm with you. If they could have a winning season and with this schedule and get to a bowl, I could see them holding serve. I could also see the Bull Gators getting together and passing the hat around and firing the athletic director and Billy Napier. It's Florida, man. It's Florida, but I'm with you. That's a good take. And kudos to you, Connor. You used the word apparatus and befuddled like within 10 seconds.
Yeah.
We bust out the thesaurus every once in a while.
That was
we try to.
We're on a vocab streak here on this show.
Yeah.
JC was pulling them out in the first segment, Connor, so he kind of set the tone. All right, 2 other teams you focused here recently that seem to be headed in different directions. That's Georgia and Kentucky. I'll be in Lexington for that Ole Miss game, and that's the SEC opener, 3:00 on ABC. If Kentucky doesn't show some fight in that matchup. We already talked about everything that's surrounding Mark Stoops right now. Where is Kentucky football compared to the 2 10-win seasons they had not so long ago? And then Georgia's Georgia. However, I think that some people believe if they were to take a mini step back, this could be the season. When I say step back, I mean they don't win 11. Maybe they win 10, or perhaps even if everything goes awry, they settle for 9. But your take on both those teams?
We have more questions than usual about Georgia, but that's probably the way Kirby Smart likes it, if we're being honest.
Mm-hmm.
There is just something to be said about starting off number 1 in America in college football, which Georgia was the last 2 years. And of course, Georgia did not make the college football playoff semifinal the last 2 years. You guys know the stat. It's a stat that we need to be referencing more. And I actually brought it up to Brett McMurphy a couple years ago, and I've since seen him use it multiple times repeatedly. I'm not saying Brett stole this exact stat. Lord knows plenty of people steal his information. But the stat is that in the last, so we're in 2024. So in the last 20 seasons, the 19 of those 20 preseason AP number 1 teams did not win a national title.
Mm-hmm.
That is just wild. And the only team that did was 2017 Alabama, who needed to get into the college football playoff by way of very murky path past UCF. We don't need to get into that again. But Lord knows it took everything for Alabama to be able to win a title that year. Point being, there is just something to be said for coming in to the season in the internet age as the number 1 team in college football. And everybody talked the last couple of years about, is Georgia in the right headspace off the field? It hasn't been a totally clean off season for Georgia. Not going to pretend that it is. They've still had their driving related arrests, which I don't know how that's still happening, but this is kind of the preamble that Kirby Smart would like. This is not Carson Beck getting private jet Lamborghini deals. This is Gunnar Stockton in his Ford F-150 that's got 300,000 miles on it. Thank you, Mark Schlabach, for that story last year that I've gotten so much juice out of. This is a different type of Georgia team that maybe hasn't experienced those highs. And maybe that does motivate them in ways that Georgia at times didn't look like it was motivated by last year. And so you question what it's going to look like on the offensive line. They're going to be able to find a true bell cow running back in Nate Frazier. I don't know. The Josh McCray addition from Illinois suggests that could be a little bit more of a timeshare, but I do have questions about this Georgia team. I also find myself going, well, if Georgia makes it back to yet another SEC championship and does that for the 8th time in 9 years, is anybody going to be really surprised? And if Georgia wins the national title and Gunnar Stockton looks like Stetson Bennett the 5th, is anybody going to be stunned by this? No, like this is the world that we live in. This is the culture that Kirby Smart has created.
Any reason for optimism at all in Lexington?
Mark Stoops has a lot of pride, but man, that's about all I got.
Yeah,
that's about all I got.
Hey, that's an honest answer.
Here's the thing. You guys are diehard college football guys, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Without doing prep, and maybe you know the answer to this question. Can you name a player on Kentucky's roster right now?
Yes.
Well, Calzada.
Can you name a non-quarterback on Kentucky's roster?
Do I have to have his exact name? It's Marquise Smith. He's from South Dakota. He's a D end. I like him. I think he was.
That's impressive, JC.
He's from the university. They got him in the portal. He's from the University of South Dakota. But I have one hot take about Kentucky, and they better look out for Toledo in the opener, Mike.
That's what they did in Mississippi State last year, too.
Yeah, look what they did. They went to Starkville and ran all over them, the Rockets. Beware. But I do think Zach Calzada, if that's Calzada, I think he will be significantly better than Brock Vandegrift, who that may have been one of the worst single season quarterback performances I've ever seen in
by a 5-star
SEC.
5-star.
Not close.
So
and he got worse as the year went on.
He quit the game. That's how bad it was.
Yeah, but
it was rough. And
I do think Zach's a better player, but that's about it.
Yeah, look, but it's not his 3rd SEC school. Like he went to Incarnate Word in between, and he worked for Cam Ward. Maybe it'll work for Zach Calzada. I don't know. The Brock Vandegrift thing is such a bummer. And I met with him I spent a little bit of time with him at the facility in February of last year, and just kind of getting to know him. And I was wondering, is this guy Southern Will Levis? Because of his size and his makeup, you kind of could talk yourself into it, and being not just the former 5-star thing, but all right, this is a guy that learned offense from Todd Monken, and that's usually been a pretty good thing. And instead, you see all the issues of when the bullets start flying, man. I don't know if it was just not playing football, like live, meaningful football, as long as he went without it, but he was just not the player that they expected him to be. And Kentucky is instead just kind of starting over offensively, even though they ran it back with Bush Hamden, who had one of the 15 worst offenses in college football. After hearing what Mark Stoops said at SEC Media Days last year about, another new offensive coordinator, almost like he just didn't want to fire an offensive coordinator to have to hire another one. Mm-hmm. That's not a good sign. It wasn't a good sign that Vince Marrow left for rival Louisville when those two guys have known each other since they were at Cardinal Mooney High School in Youngstown, Ohio. And that was the first assistant that he hired. I mean, those two guys were, they went back and forth, but just bad vibes in Lexington. And look, my brother lives there. My sister-in-law works at UK. All right. So I keep my ear to the ground with all things Kentucky. I really do. And there is just less optimism than any time that I've been doing this job for all things Kentucky. Mm-hmm. And it's a shame for Mark Stoops after what he's built there, but it feels like he's just steering right into an ugly exit in Lexington.
Seems like best of both worlds would be, and you may need a demolition crew or some dynamite to get him out. If Kirk Ferentz would leave Iowa,
it's always going to be the one.
They would throw Stoops a lifeline. That's a similar job. It's probably a little easier to win in Iowa, to be honest. They could throw him a lifeline, and then they're going to go direct. Mitch Barnhart will be on a plane to New Orleans to get Summerall right away. And that's got to be tough for Mark Stoops, too, because he's done all this for so long. But your former assistant down there is one of the hottest young coaches in America. He won at Troy, and now he's winning at Tulane, and he's an alum on top of that. And that's just got to be a tough situation, in my opinion.
The worst case scenario for Kentucky would be Kentucky goes like 5-7, loses that game to Louisville to end the regular season with Vince Marrow on the other sideline. I don't know if GMs are going to be on the sideline, whatever. They can make it work for that guy. And then Mitch Barnhart doesn't fire Stoops. And instead, someone else hires John Summerall, who's considered the coach in waiting. Yeah. And all of a sudden, you're like, wait a minute. So you're going to wait another year to pay that buyout? You didn't want to pay the $35 million plus, whatever it is for the staff, upwards of $40 million to make a move like that. You didn't want to pay it. And then instead, you just watched your dream coach take another job somewhere else. So there are a lot of ways in which this could go very, very poorly, and not a whole lot of ways it feels like in which they can go right.
On top of everything else with Kentucky, I would just say this, that they won a lot of games with a really pedestrian, no-frills offense that was based on the big blue wall. A lot of ground and pound, time of possession, turnover battle. That was their DNA. Lately, they don't have any of that. They never throw the ball particularly well. With the exception of 1 year with Levis and Wan'Dale Robinson. And then now they're not gashing people on the ground either. So if you can't do either one of those things well, it's pretty hard to put up points in the SEC. It's going to be a very interesting year to see what they do. We'll let you go on this. The obligatory, it's a fascinating year, top 4, top 5 quarterbacks in this league. There's a lot of exciting talent. I don't know if you've done this already, so forgive me if I've already asked. Okay. Subject to change. We're in July. You might have a different opinion in late August, but give me your top 5 in order.
I had a slightly different opinion post-spring compared to when I did this. I think it was like early February, late January, something like that. The only change I made, so I still have Garrett Nussmeier as my number 1 quarterback in the SEC. Not too much of a surprise there, given what I've already said about LSU. And then I initially had Lagway at 2, Sellers at 3. I since switched those two guys. Just Lagway not throwing in spring. The more I think about it, the more that gives me a little bit of pause about the player that he's going to be from the jump. And then at 4, I have Arch Manning, which maybe that'll prove to be too high. I don't really know at this point. And then I have Diego Pavia at 5. Yeah, look.
Diego coming in hot over Mateer.
Yes. I'm more of a skeptic with Mateer, who did the vast majority of his damage against the Mountain West schedule. I'm going to need to see it because Diego Pavia, people don't realize this, like Diego Pavia last year was the first quarterback to ever go directly from an FBS school into the SEC and earn all SEC honors at season's end. Now, we've obviously seen transfers do that, like a Cam Newton or something, but they have the gap year in between. And for Pavia to do that as a quarterback doing that, that to me showed this dude is ready. We've already seen him take down the big, bad Alabama teams of the world. We've seen him go toe-to-toe with Texas, what's a really respected Texas defense. And I think people kind of forget he also was hurt in the latter half of last season, was playing through a pretty obvious knee injury that limited his mobility that he suffered against Kentucky. And I don't even think he was at full health until that Georgia Tech game. And in the Georgia Tech game, you're reminded, this dude is electric. He's got the coordinator continuity. He's got maybe the best returning tight end in all of college football, and Eli Stowers as well. I'm going on too much of a rant here, but I think Diego Pavia is still a really good football player, and I would take him, even though he's 5'8", probably.
Anchor down. All right, I lied. One last one. Gamecock Nation has weighed in. You already gave us your top 4, and then you said Ole Miss. Any forecast on Carolina this year?
I don't want to disrespect Clayton White. I don't, because what they did last year defensively was remarkable. I mean, by the time that those dudes got to the NFL Combine, and you really had to like sit there and marvel at the amount of talent that they had on the defensive side of the ball in the NFL Combine. It was insane to think about. It really was. I question what it's going to look like around Dylan Stewart, and defensively, I worry about him getting too many triple teams. I know he can work through some triple teams, as he did in that Kentucky game, most notably. But I worry about the surrounding pieces and how much you're going to be able to key in on him. And I think defensive regression with a schedule that is really difficult could be in store. I have questions about what it's going to look like transitioning on the offensive side of the ball from Dow Loggins, who wasn't an elite schemer, but he was a really good developer of quarterbacks. What it's going to look like going from Dow Loggins to Mike Shula. And then, goodness gracious, can they get some help at receiver? I know Nick Harbor not doing track is really beneficial. And, there's a lot of positive vibes coming out of camp about him. And that's all well and good. But that was maybe the worst receiver group in the SEC last year. And Lenora Sellers having to put on his cape as much as he did, it was great to see, but you don't want to see that from a guy that is he is your team, like the foundation of your team. So I say that all to point out, I could see regression. I'm a Shane Beamer believer. I think the schedule is really difficult. And if you have more holes on the defensive side of the ball, it's going to be a tougher go. I think it's going to be a tougher go. So I see them more as like a 7-5 type team and not necessarily having the same sort of late season playoff relevance that they had last year.
What you working on next? In closing here, what's the next post July 4th holiday? What you got?
Yeah, I'm doing this series right now, aligning with the SEC Network Takeover for the best things about each SEC team. Mm-hmm. So we were hitting on some of those.
Continue with that, yeah.
Yeah, so we'll be hitting on that leading up to Media Days, and then we've got Media Days, which it's crazy that it's already here. So no good to be here this time of year, and by the time Media Days come around, I'm mid-season form, so we'll be ready to go.
Can't come soon enough.
Yeah, I was going to say one thing.
Yeah,
I've read all these quarterback lists. I always hate most of them. I think yours would be about like I would have them.
Thank you.
To be honest.
Thank you.
Yeah, not that my opinion means a beans, but
or does mine.
No, but I was like, because you were reading them off, I'm like, there's probably something I'll disagree with strongly. There's not. I love the Pavia. I think Pavia is one of the best players in college football. He'll never see an NFL field.
Who cares?
That dude is a
baller.
Matter. He is a baller, and Jerry Kill being there, it's the kill zone. I told Mike Morgan about that last summer, and he laughed. I said, look, y'all are going to think I'm crazy, but don't sleep on Jerry Kill and Diego Pavia and Eli Stowers being at Vandy now, because they beat Auburn by 3 touchdowns the year before. I was like, you just don't. And New Mexico State's the worst job in college football. Mike's been to Las Cruces, he can tell you. And I'm like, for them to do that, that's scary. That should be scary for a lot of people. And sure enough, week 1, the kill zone.
Can the kill zone make
Knock
an
the
encore?
Hokies out, you know. So
There's not a bigger fan of Jerry Kill than the man you
I
see in
love
J.C.
Jerry
Sherbert.
Kill, dude. Love that guy.
There are man crushes, and then there's the way J.C. feels
because he won at Northern and he was winning it. He just had health problems, man. I mean, like, you know, it's just unfortunate. He may be the coach at Notre Dame right now and be winning national titles if his health was different. That sucks, but he's helping Vandy. He's helping Clark Lee quite a bit. So
one of those guys that's a lot younger than he looks too, which is like I think he just turned 60 or something like that, but he was like in his 40s when all that was going down at Minnesota. And I remember being really surprised that he was as young as he was.
Yeah. But
he's done a terrific job, no doubt about
no
that.
doubt.
Connor, always a great job joining us. And again, the website, SaturdayDownSouth.com. Really appreciate you jumping on. Have a great 4th of July weekend.
Gentlemen, appreciate it. Be well.
Thanks, Connor. Happy 4th, bud.
He is Connor O'Gara, and friend of the program. Appreciate him stopping by. As always, presented by Advocare, advocare.com. We are powered by them here on JC and Morgan. All right, G5 John, real quick, to keep the G5 reps in terms of new coaches. FIU, Willie Simmons, JC, 44 years of age.
He's a good coach, man. Just wait.
He replaced Mike McIntyre. Jacksonville State hired Charles Kelly, the Jacksonville State Gamecocks.
That's okay.
He replaced Rich Rodriguez, who, of course, is at West Virginia. That's a really good job. I've actually done a playoff game there at Jack State. That's a really good, quote-unquote, small school job. Sam Houston, the return of Phil Longo. Talk about a guy whose stock kind of plummeted a bit, Phil Longo. And then Kennesaw State, remember they had a massive upset last year. They hired Jerry Mack, who replaced Brian Bohannon, the 2024 running back coach with the Jacksonville Jaguars. That's all I have on Jerry Mack. Give me that five or dimer. What did you have? All right.
So in Caddyshack, is Judge Small actually the hero?
Smells?
Smells. No, I'm sorry. Did I write Smells? I said Small. I was reading off a script like Anchorman.
Blank you, San Diego.
Blank you, San Diego. No, just about. Is he actually the hero of Caddyshack? Because check this out. My man's worked hard his whole life for he and his wife to afford a modest boat. He was supposed to play golf in peace every day. He's got his not his son, his nephew, trying to teach him the value of $1.
Spalding.
Right? And then here comes Rodney Dangerfield's character, and you got Chevy Chase's character, an insane person you have to deal with, and there's gophers all over the court, and somebody put a floater in the pool, and it's just his life is just miserable. And my man's worked hard to get to the point where he could live a comfortable retirement, and now all this shit happens to him. So what do you guys say about that, Mike?
This is a very. Where did you come up with this? How was this like 2 a.m? When did you come up with this?
I can't claim it. Somebody else was talking about this.
Okay, all right. I wouldn't go so far as to say Judge Smells is a hero because I judge people on how they treat the common folk, people that they don't know, people that can't do anything for them in life. And if you're just a natural a-hole like he is to the people at the golf course, I can't say hero, but I will say this. You're right. There are some, there's
tragic.
He's just trying to keep anybody who's been like in a neighborhood with an HOA. You understand that, like, you hate paying the HOA, but you also understand if you don't have it, there's some people that just don't know how to handle themselves and can train wreck a neighborhood real fast. I think that's what Smells is trying to do. He's trying to save the integrity of this golf course and club. And, I'm never going to be a member of a golf course, so this is out of my domain, JC. It's too much money, and I'm not a good enough golfer. But I can respect where he's coming from in that regard. He's just got to be a little bit nicer. So if we can reincarnate Judge Smells, that would be my one piece of advice. But you bring up a very valid point. Very valid point.
Yeah, that was it. There was one more about. I'll bring up next episode about Johnny Castle and Dalton and Bodie from Point Break.
Okay.
All right, so I'll just tell it real quick. Johnny Castle, of course, he's in the summertime, and he's doing the dancing, and he's around all these rich people that treat him like crap, and he gets in a fight, knocks that big dude out. So he learns he knows how to fight. So Dirty Dancing ends, and he goes to the Midwest, right? And he becomes a bouncer, gets into the bouncing. They say he doesn't want to go to college like these other people. He just wants to go out and feel his way. And so he gets into Roadhouse, and at the bar, gets into fights and all that good stuff. And Roadhouse ends like it does, with another rich person kind of coming down on him. So he completely goes zen, loses his mind, moves to Los Angeles, and understands that he just wants to surf. He gets really into surfing, but he still hates rich people. So he goes and robs banks and forms a gang as Bodie. And then it ends like it ends. I did not get that. That was not me either. But it was funny.
That's okay. You're just passing along creativity.
I need to start getting into that, man, because I bet I'd be pretty good at that. But here was the connection too. In Point Break, Bodie talks about how it was like a '57 Chevy I used to drive, and in Dirty Dancing, he drove a '57 Chevy.
How about that?
Yeah.
How about that? Did you? If you haven't discovered, folks, Tubi. If you just like classic old movies and you realize Hollywood has basically given up, it's a crap fest of options nowadays, unless you like movies, again, about grown men wearing capes. Tubi is this thing, I've discovered it in the past few months. Like, I knew it was a thing, but I really actually have given it a shot now. And you can just turn on classic 80s, 90s. It's free. Now, it has commercials in it. So it'd be like watching, TBS and watching Roadhouse for the 100th time for free with commercials. But man, it's got, so I gave you another chance to watch Bad Boys.
You sent me, and I downloaded Tubi.
And you downloaded Tubi. Okay,
I did download Tubi.
That's the first step. That's the first step. Bad Boy, not the one with Will Smith, the one with Sean Penn, who in real life is a complete whack job, but still, it's a really good movie. And I'm like rediscovering Can't Buy Me Love, Night Shift. I mean, all these movies, Just One of the Guys, About Last Night.
Oh, Just One of the Guys? That was a good one.
Oh, yeah, that's on there. Where Do You Get Off Heaven? Yeah, that's on there. It's just, I'm all pro Tubi. I get, this is an unsolicited plug for Tubi. I'm just saying. And Craig, in closing, the wife and I have 2 more episodes of The Better Sister before we finish that. So, but that is that's actually a good show going on right about now. I've got season 4 of The Bear to watch, and maybe a couple of other things here to kind of fill the void of actual football games here in the next couple of months. 50 days away from week 0. Big 12 media days around the corner, and then SEC media days in Atlanta as well. Exciting time as always. Our thanks again to our fearless producer, Phil Mullinax. He's about to take off for vacation, but he was determined, as we all were, to get one in here before the holiday weekend. JC, you brought it. You brought the info. You brought the entertainment. And most importantly, you brought the hat.
This is my wife's hat. Her head is very small. Mine is about 16 gallons. So I've been balancing it. Notice I've been very still this episode.
That's okay. You've managed to keep it on there. That's all that matters.
Yeah, looks great.
You and that 5 head that you have up there. That's awesome. Hey, you and Nat have a very safe and fortuitous and fun 4th of July weekend in the Midwest, and we encourage everybody else out there to do that no matter where you're listening and tuning in. We'll be back in a week and a half, I guess, or off next week for the holiday, but the following week we'll be back. I think one of those weeks we've already got Phil Steele scheduled to come on, and we'll have some other guests and other stuff too. JC, the website's looking great. Let's just throw in a quick plug for that.
You probably saw it at the opener, collegefootballforever.com. You can find all our episodes there. Also, SEC Sunday night, our other kind of general college football show on the Chief Sports Network is off this week. It'll be back the 13th. Right before SEC Media Days. But you can find all that information on collegefootballforever.com. Stick with it, because there'll be a lot of frequent articles, videos, lots of different content there. But I said last time the battleship was not yet fully operational. it's a little further along the Return of the Jedi Death Star at this point. So check it out, collegefootballforever.com. Also, the Chief Sports app. You can stream all of our shows, all of our live shows on that. It's a free download. You can get it at the App Store or Google Play.
All right, folks, everybody out there, thank you so much for not only listening to today or whenever you wind up listening to this particular installment of JC and Morgan, but throughout the year and or years. We are excited about our 10th year with the program. For JC and the Mad Dog, this is Mike saying so long. Have a terrific 4th of July weekend, everybody.